does it make sense in your mind to kick the tires on a Phillip Rivers, on a Nick Foles, or do the Colts roll with Jacob Eason and hope that Wentz returns, again, closer to the 5-week mark than the 12-week mark?
Yeah, I would roll with Eason. I guess let's take Rivers. I mean, he made it very clear that December is
Hmm.
kind of his target. He wants to coach this high school football team throughout its season, so that doesn't fit the Colts timeline. Obviously, Foles is the big name because him and Frank have this connection, and both of them have gone out of their way to laud each other over the past couple of days.
Yes.
I think a couple things to keep in mind with Foles. First, that's about an $8 or $9 million, guarantee. Are you going to take that on for a Band-Aid, for a stopgap? And then secondly, I just think we have to acknowledge Nick Foles had an unbelievable Super Bowl run, and that was with Frank Reich. But there's a reason Nick Foles has bounced around 5 or 6 NFL teams. And you look at his record and his play since that Super Bowl, it's been pretty pedestrian. Now, what would happen in 10 days before the start of the season, assuming the Bears ride out the offseason with them, is 3 practices enough to get on the same page with this personnel? Obviously, he would know the playbook, but I think the personnel would be a different question. I'd rather go kind of the young route. Again, I'm good with Easton, but I need to see a little bit more. A guy like Gardner Minshew would be enticing to me. Another reason why is, he has some familiarity in this division. You have a huge game against Tennessee in week 3 down there in Nashville. But I think as of now, the Colts want to see 2 things. They want to see how Easton progresses, where Wentz is at rehab before they potentially make some sort of substantial move.
Talking to Kevin Bowen at KBowen1070 on Twitter. You can find Kevin's great work there. It's funny you bring up Gardner Minshew, Kevin, because that's a guy that you threw right. We hear all the names. Jimmy G was first thrown out there, and Nick Foles, and now you have Phillip Rivers talking about potentially returning later on in the season. To your point, if the Colts were to trade someone, and I'm with you by the 100%, I think the Colts rolls Jacob Eason, whether it's for 2 games and Wentz returns faster than normal, whether it's for 2 months and the rehab is slower and Wentz progresses longer than we think. To me, I think it makes the most sense for the Colts to roll with Eason. But Minshew is a guy that, to what you mentioned before, that's a guy that does kind of would get me excited. I am a Colts fan, just for the record. Kind of coming in there because he is better than the Jaguars' record was. He was benched last year because I think he played too well in part, and they were trying to get that first overall pick. That's a guy that I think would be the most enticing for the Colts and give them the best chance to win, more than Nick Foles, maybe even more than a Jimmy G per se. But I do wonder, with Carson Wentz's psyche, right? We know what happened in Philadelphia between him and Nick Foles. That's why I don't think there's any shot Nick Foles trades happens to begin with. But even trading for any other quarterback, I don't think the Colts would, I don't say make the same mistake, but I don't think they would try to put themselves after making or giving up a 2nd-round pick that could turn into a 1st and a 3rd-round pick for Carson Wentz. I don't think they would want history to repeat themselves or just open up the opportunity to do that by bringing in another quarterback, even if off the bat it's clear that, hey, you're only going to play until Carson returns. I do wonder and I do worry that if there is some success there, jealousy could start setting in, and we can kind of see the same Carson Wentz that happened in Philly where his relationship deteriorated because of the relationship with the backup quarterback. Is that a concern in your mind as another reason why the Colts shouldn't bring someone in, is kind of history that Carson had with backup quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think it's a very fair question that you bring up. My thoughts are this: if your franchise quarterback is worried about Nick Foles as a backup, is he mentally tough enough to be your franchise quarterback? And that might sound harsh, but that's a thought I have. Now, having said that, you've committed to Carson Wentz, so there has to be some catering to him. I don't
Right.
know how he would feel about it, but the reality of the situation is Carson Wentz is your guy, and so keeping him mentally whatever, it has to be on your radar. So that probably adds to the, oh boy, do you really want to go out and get Wentz? Now, like I was saying earlier, Frank Reich loves Carson Wentz. He loves in all caps Nick Foles. So does Frank say to Chris Ballard, hey, let me handle this. I'll get to Carson and we won't have any sort of issue here. But you've committed to this guy, and that means what you put around him, you got to put him in the most favorable situation. While I think that's a little bit, mentally questionable, in my opinion. Again, that's the reality of the situation. There has to be a layer to the story.